Permanent representative of the State of Israel to the United Nations, Danny Danon, there, stating that this was an attack that was necessary and it was done in self-defense. And Dr. Alan Burstein, who is a professor of political science at the Tufts University, is still with us from Boston in the United States. Now, Dr. Burstein, this is a key moment in this war, is it not? Now, Donald Trump can declare victory and say that, listen, we've taken out the top leader of Iran. But on the other side, the Iranians still seem to be putting up a pretty solid fight. They're firing 200-odd plus missiles at different American bases in the region, which have all been struck. So even if the top leadership of Iran has been taken out, the regime still works. How does the United States and Israel look at this?
So Iran really cannot hope to fight off the U.S. or Israeli Air Force. We saw this already in the 12-day war back in June. So Iran really, the reason that it is pummeling Israel and U.S. bases across the region with missiles is because, and why they're also threatening to close the Straits of Hormuz, their only hope is that international pressure or local pressure in Israel and the United States will bring about the governments to stop the attacks, because the Air Force and their air defenses, we saw this already, cannot really withstand against the United States and Israel. What is important, though, as you said, is that the regime is not all dependent on one man. Iran has had 47 years to develop a very well-oiled machine where there's a supreme leader, then there is the council, then there's a parliament, then there's a president. There's also different security apparatuses. There's the police, the Revolutionary Guards, the Basij, and the military. All of these still, at this point, remain loyal to the regime. So even with Khamenei dead, that doesn't mean the regime has fallen. For the regime to fall, there would have to be a massive uprising from within Iran, and you would need the security forces to turn away from the regime. We haven't seen that, and I think probably too many people in the United States are looking at this like Maduro in Venezuela and are saying if you just pluck out the leader, then the regime will all of a sudden turn and be in the favor of the United States. But it's very different, because Khamenei was not a single dictator like Assad in Syria maybe, was not a single dictator that if you remove him, everything else falls apart. There's a whole well-oiled machine here that's still surviving.
Now, the Iranians have, of course, been planning for a situation such as this. They've been wargaming. They've been looking at different simulations of how things will play out. Now, for Donald Trump, for him, having a short, successful war is crucial. A long war where the United States of America is dragged on for several months and possibly years is something that Donald Trump will find really hard to explain to his own MAGA constituency. In your assessment, do you think Donald Trump will be more inclined to take the victory that is there on the table if he's taken out Ali Khamenei? Or do you think the destruction of the regime to bring about a regime change is what the Americans and the Israelis will now fight, which could result in a long-drawn war?
I think we may see now a difference between Israel and the United States. Israel would be very happy to have the war continue in order to bring about regime change. We also have to look to the fact that at the end of 2026, there are supposed to be midterm elections in the United States and general elections in Israel. And in Israel, Netanyahu wants to come to those elections having brought about regime change in Iran. That's key for him to try to say, this is why you need to vote for me again. In turn, like you said, in the United States, Trump needs to come to the midterms not involved in a war. He needs to come to the midterms saying, I'm America first. We did what we had to do, but I'm not spending American tax dollars on the Middle East. That's what MAGA does not want. So we might see in the coming weeks a difference of opinion between Israel and the United States as to what is the aim. Is the aim now to ensure that a different regime comes up, even if that requires a long war? Or have we succeeded because Khamenei was the real enemy, and now let the chips fall, and if we have to go back in a year, then let that happen? I think Trump at this point is still in favor of seeing regime change, but that may change within a day or two. And Israel is going to want things to continue, and we may start to see that difference of opinion in the coming week.
All right, so there are some very interesting developments that are unfolding. Things are very, very fluid at this moment. And what is also now being reported is that Israel claims that Khamenei and 40 of the top leaders of the Iranian government have in fact been taken out in these Israeli and American attacks. This, of course, is the latest that is coming in. You know, taking out 40 top leaders of the regime. How much of a blow is it for the regime? And do you think, going ahead, what sort of a challenge will the top leadership in Iran face in running the administration, putting up the resistance against the American and the Israeli attacks? And how does Iran go from here?
It is a major blow that such a large amount of the leadership was taken out, but I'll say that it's less surprising than when it happened in June. In June, that was a complete shock to the Iranian government that they were actually that the Israeli intelligence had managed to infiltrate so high that in the opening attack they managed to assassinate all the top military leadership and many politicians. At this point, it's less surprising. And one of the things that Iran has done, as you said, they were gaming this for a while. One of the things that they did is make sure that everyone has successors. So if you take someone out, that should not make the entire ministry collapse. You should have the next person just step into their shoes. So at this point, it's not going to be as crippling to Iran as it was back in June. But the main challenge for anyone who comes up is going to be to try to balance two things, to try to, on the one hand, make sure that the security apparatus still represses the Iranian people because he doesn't want them to rise up, and then still try to appease the United States to try to get the attacks to stop. He's going to try to do this dual thing at the same time. It's not going to be easy.
Indeed. Dr. Alan Burson, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Boston in the United States of America. We'll slip into a short break now. More updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned to WION.